Alright? Patch here, and welcome to my top 10 list of video games of 2024. I've played a lot of exciting new games last year, and I just wanted to share my favorites with everyone. And no, before anyone says, this is not AI generated. First at number 10, just to get it out of the way, it is Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree. Though not technically a new game, which is why I've put it at the bottom of this list, don't let that take away from the fact that Elden Ring is an all-time classic. Elden Ring is certainly in my top 10 favorite games of all time, and this expansion was not just more of the same, it was way more. I would argue that some of the boss's set pieces and environments are even better than the base game. Sometimes I would just stop moving, sit there in awe, and soak in the atmosphere. This was more than just a reminder of why Elden Ring rocks so hard, but unfortunately, that's the only reason why I put this at number 10. Although I had a much better experience playing this expansion than some other games in this list, this is a list of new games and not expansions. So before anyone asks why I put a particular game in front of this one on the list, this is my reason. Otherwise this would be at least in my top 3, which wouldn't be fair on the others in the list. Moving on, at number 9 we've got Animal Well. I know to a lot of people this is just the donkey game, but trust me, this is more than that. This is a morbid curiosity type game where you just can't help but wonder what's in the next room. There's so much to explore even if you don't understand anything, and then there's the satisfaction of solving a puzzle or unlocking a new area. It's both atmospheric and creepy at the same time, and the aura of mystery just makes you want to keep going even into the late hours of the night. My biggest flaw with this game, however, is, as mysterious as it is, it can be a little too mysterious for its own good. I hate to admit it, but I did find myself looking certain things up in my pursuit to discover everything, and even then I doubt that I have discovered everything. Having to whip out a guidebook will always take points away from a game for me, and it doesn't help when there are so many other games out there that I want to try. It can be a little bit of a test of patience. But that should not take away from the overall experience, and I'll never forget that incredible experience that I had exploring this game for the first time. At number 8 is Pal World. I'm not gonna lie, I was prepared to hate this one. As a huge Pokemon fan, I wrote this game off as one big AI-generated ripoff. So when I finally caved into the peer pressure, I actually found myself having a good time with it. It was like a glimpse of the unrealized potential that the Pokemon series has. Although I usually find it difficult to get absorbed into most survival games, this was a rare exception, or at least it starts off that way. It has something interesting mechanics, such as having your pals help you build your base, but they can only take you so far until you start to get bored of it, or at least I did. I do still think most of the designs were AI generated, which is completely unforgivable in my book. I will give this game credit for making me expect more from the Pokemon franchise. Will it make me not buy the next game? Probably not, but at least now I have these expectations, and who knows, maybe Pal World will be the kick in the butt that the franchise needs. At number 7 it's The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I know this isn't exactly the greatest game in the Zelda franchise, nor is it the best Zelda game that I've played for the first time this year. Earlier this year, I finally played the Link's Awakening remake, and I have to say that turned into one of my favorite Zelda games ever. It's hard to explain why without going into spoiler territory, so I'll save that for another time, but this new game certainly had a tough act to follow. Although it just fell short for me, that doesn't take away how charming this game is. It was definitely interesting to see this echo mechanics in play. And although it seemed game-breaking at first, it limits the mechanic in a way so that it feels like a natural part of the game. Although not as creative as Tears of the Kingdom, I think it was still fun, and it was just as fun seeing some of the iconic races from the older games in this art style. I wasn't all that invested in the story, but I certainly had a good time and it deserves a spot on my list. But for the record, if anyone tries to hit Conde again, they'll have to answer to me. Coming in at number 6 is a game that I don't hear too much about anymore, and it is a shame. Another Crab's Treasure. A cute little Souls-like game that really hit home at the time with some of its themes. I played this game at a very specific period in my life that made me connect with it even more. I won't go into too much detail, but as far as Souls games go, this is a pretty good one. I once heard it referred to as baby's first Souls game, and I believe this is accurate. Plenty of accessibility options to help all players play how they prefer. Unfortunately, it wasn't without its issues, especially since I played the Switch version of the game, but I still really liked what I played. As cute and adorable as the characters are though, it does touch on some pretty dark themes, so be warned before trying this one for yourself. The next two games were pretty difficult to rank, but next on this list is Tekken 8. I'm a big fan of fighting games, and this series is one of the main reasons why, but Street Fighter 6 was such a massive hit for me. Tekken 8 had a very tough act to follow. That new Mortal Kombat game definitely flopped, and I honestly thought this new game would too, but fortunately I was wrong. This is still a fantastic series, and this new game is no exception. I find it hard to explain what makes fighting games so awesome without telling you to try them for yourself, but out of all the other fighting games that I've tried, especially if you're new to the genre, I would advise to try this one first. It is difficult to master, but it's also easy to pick up, and there's plenty of content to sink your teeth into, unlike certain other games. It's also hard for me to describe the negatives of this game without getting too technical, but for now all I'll say is this is a fantastic fighting game, and if there's a time to start or an old player to hop back in, it would be now. Speaking of content, the next game on this list is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. It was difficult for me to rank this game higher than Tekken 8, but for me personally, Sparking Zero is just jam-packed full of variety. The customization just adds so much to the game, almost as a detriment to every other fighting game out there. Sure, there's still a lot of characters and costumes that are missing, but just being able to create your own battles, set your own AI variables, generate branching paths, direct your own cutscenes, there is just no end to all the possibilities in this game. And before anyone comes here and claims that this game is broken, so what? The older games were broken and were never meant for competitive play, and if you were going into this game for competitive play, then you're going into this game for the wrong reason. Just enjoy it for what it is. This is a true love letter to every Dragon Ball fan out there, with a boatload of content, which is the only reason why this game ranks just slightly higher than Tekken 8. And if you don't like it, well, you can take a taste of my Gallic gun. For number 3, I'm giving it to Balatro. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but I cannot express enough how good Balatro actually is. I know a lot of people will just write it off as just another card game, but when you think about it, isn't Solitaire just another card game, and look how popular that is. I honestly believe Balatro could be the next Solitaire. I've lost track of how many hours I have sunk into this game, and I'm still not bored with it. But trust me, if you're looking to play any game that isn't an online multiplayer, I recommend this one. You could just sit back and play it for hours and hours. It is that addictive. And you know what else? Yes, this game does have gambling themes, but when you think about it, this game could be the gambling equivalent of vaping. A substitute for smoking, Balatro could be a substitute for gambling. I'm definitely going off topic a little bit, and I will stop myself before I start upsetting people. But believe me, this game is fantastic, and you owe it to yourself to try at least once. The top 2 was also tough to choose, but after a long consideration, I've decided to go with Black Myth Wukong next. This was the game of the year for a lot of people. I had my doubts before it came out. I had no clue what it was going to play like. Was it a Souls-like, or was it a Devil May Cry-like, or maybe even a Final Fantasy VII-like? Honestly though, I think it's a Wukong-like. Of course it takes a lot of elements from other games, but I feel like it is unique, one of a kind, a memorable experience with tons of boss and enemy variety, rich with Chinese mythological lore, an episodic format that makes it feel more like a journey, an impressive soundtrack, all bringing prominence to a small Chinese studio that deserves all the praise in the world for making such a spectacle. Whereas most Souls games will trick you with some dastardly level design, this game makes you feel like the trickster, using all kinds of foolishness to mess with your enemies. A story that keeps you on your toes with twists and turns. Like one minute you're chasing a monkey that can turn statues into zombies, and the next you're transformed into a fox hungry for revenge. I could go on and on about this game, but the last thing I'll say for now is I hope people do not get offended by me putting the game in second place. Trust me, it was a close second, closer than most other years. But for my number one game of 2024, I have to go with Astrobot. I know it's not a unique choice, but if you asked me which of these two I enjoyed more, I would probably say this one. Personally, coming from someone who loves 3D platformers, I've been waiting for a game like this for a long time. I feel like the genre has been forgotten for a while, particularly in favor of more action and adventure games, and Astrobot was an example of what could be possible for the genre in this day and age. Everything about it is so enjoyable, from the controls to the level design, from the music to the sound effects, the cute little designs, and the long list of references. Not necessarily to sell other PlayStation games, but to remind people of what made PlayStation so awesome, at least until nowadays. Because of this game now though, I do feel like Nintendo has a very tough act to follow. If the next 3D Mario game isn't as well polished, well designed, or isn't as close to a technical masterpiece as Astrobot is, well, let's just say that I hope this could be the start of a 3D platforming renaissance. It probably won't, but I would love to see more 3D platformers like this in the future. Nonetheless, it was a close call, but I do believe Astrobot was my favorite game from 2024, and I would love to see more like this in the future. I know last year was full of stinkers, but I just wanted to share some positivity on the channel, especially after everything going on with that imposter. But I hope you enjoyed this list, and here's hoping for an even better year for video games in the year 2025. Now take care and peace.